Alrighty, y'all. So we are on to part two of this Murray 16.5 horsepower mower that I got for 25 bucks. 16.5 horsepower Briggs. The end of the first part, which is the video before here, y'all saw that it does run. But I ended it with the exhaust. You can see the exhaust glowing really hot. Which means that it's probably running a little hot, and that's probably the case because of all the cooling fins and whatnot with dirt and stuff inside of them, especially down there. And actually, after I ended the video, I turned it off and it started smoking from where it was kindling up the old mouse nest and whatnot that I didn't get just from my little quick clean under there. So now what I'm going to do, usually I wait until the very end to wash off mowers, but I am going to actually go ahead and take the this purple cleaner whatnot. And I've learned that kind of a little helpful hint, you get spray bottles and stuff like that. These little bottles that you use to like spray pesticides and stuff work really well for spraying off engines, like with the purple cleaner and whatnot. And that's really the best way to go about cleaning this stuff, is just spraying it with this purple cleaner. Usually washes most of the dirt away. As y'all saw in the last video, another thing that I'm going to have to do is put a fuel line on it, at least the top part. The bottom part looks good. Just the top part going from the tank to the fuel filter has got a lot of electrical tape wrapped around it, and it actually was leaking a little bit. So I'm going to finish putting this purple cleaner on and wash this off and get all the crud out from under these fins, just to hopefully mitigate the cooling problem that this thing has, and the fact that I also don't want it to catch on fire too, so that kind of helps. So that's going to be coming up with the fuel line and the deck belt and the tire tubes. Don't know if I'll get to it all in this part, but we'll see what I can get to. Just wanted to show you all that that's the current status. Oh, and I said I got the hood off as well. So just a couple of bolts here, got the hood off. There's a spring that I had to unlatch back here somewhere. It's actually on the hood itself. So that's kind of the status right now. I'm going to clean this off, catch up with y'all after that. And then I'll have to order the fuel line and the tire tubes. And just real quick, wash it with the air filter on. You don't want, especially with the way these air filters are, with the intake on the top part of it, you don't want water getting down in the intake and diluting your fuel and stuff like that. So just another helpful hint. Kind of a dreary day out now. Got a couple goodies in though. I do have a messy garage, but that will be remedied at a to be determined date. Deck belt, I believe it's 88 inches. The length of it, was it 37 by 88? Right there on the sticker, 37 by 88. The drive belt's actually only 1 inch shorter. And then I got some tubes for the rear tires, since they are not holding air. Front tires are good, so I'm happy about that. So let me get the deck belt on. And never done one on one of these Murrays before, but down here, the height adjustment, you have a cutting height, and then you have a kind of a removal / work on it height. Puts it all the way on the ground. And let's take a look at what we have down here. Bunch of leaves. First off, oh, this is even simpler than most of the Craftsman's. You have your guides in the front there. Around the main pulley, you have your I guess engagement pulley right there, and then you have your 2 pulleys for your deck belt itself. So all I gotta do is kind of slide the belt over the guides here on each side of the pulley, as well as over here on the the deck, or the, excuse me, the crankshaft of the motor. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Good enough. That's a little better. Just a matter of just kind of forcing it up through there. Okay. And the other spindle over there is the same deal as this spindle, and then just taking it off of the guides right on the front. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. We're going to check the condition of the belt. We're going to put the new one back on. So got it out here now. I've seen worse. This one definitely needed replacing with the cracks and stuff in it. It's just from age. It's not really wearing bad or anything like that. So got that. Toss it in the trash. These things are, like I said, they're $10 or $11, and ain't no need for me to save a used mower deck belt, at least to put on a riding mower. Excuse me. So the assembly process is exactly like the disassembly process for the belt. They're literally like a 5-minute job. I want to give you a pointer on the side over here with the guides and whatnot. So this guide right here, the belt goes under this guide, and the belt also goes over the blade engage spring. So under the guide, over the blade engage spring, over to that pulley around to the pulley on the crankshaft, and then obviously the two pulleys for the two blades. So I'll go ahead and put this on. Still trying out this new tripod or monopod mount there, like a little selfie stick. But we'll just start on this side. Remember the small groove inside for the blade pulleys and the crank pulley going under. Going under this guide here. Oops, fell off. Under the guide, pulley. There we go. We'll get the other side real quick. Remember, the belt that you put on it is going to be a little bit tighter than the one that you took off of it. So just remember that. As you're doing this. So I would do the crankshaft. I'd do this pulley over here last, in all honesty, because you want to have one of the smaller pulleys and not the crankshaft pulley as the one that you end up putting on. Belt got a little tangled under the spring there, so let me go do the crankshaft pulley next. That's a pretty easy job. Get y'all over here so you can see. These guides are a little tough to get around, and they're designed to be that way. Because you don't want your deck belt falling off there. And then coming from the right pulley, it hits this pulley coming from the right side. Oh, there you go, sorry. So right side pulley, engagement, pulley, crankshaft, pulley. Last but not least, we're going to do blade number 2 over here on the left side. And voila, a deck belt. Good thing about these Murrays is the pulleys, I guess, throw pretty far for what they do, because that belt is super loose as it is, and you can actually adjust the amount that you want the spring to throw as well. So if you look at that, it tightens up the deck, and you got to remember that I've got the deck on its lowest setting too, and naturally that's going to cause the belt to be a little looser. From my experience working with these mowers, MTD and Craftsman are also the same way. I guess just the way that they're all situated. So I've got the blades on now, and you see this belt's pretty tight. You don't want it to be like so tight that it's like choking the pulleys and causing excessive wear. You got it off now, and you can see how much looser it is. So that's that. The next order of business, and I'm going to break down one of these days and buy a mini tire changer. But next order of business is actually going to be getting the tire tubes into the tires in the rear. So let me go ahead and figure out my plan of attack for that. If I decide to take off the dust covers to potentially do this, which I have to be really careful because these are plastic dust covers, or if I'm just going to try and do it right on the mower. I've done both before. Neither are easier nor harder. Honestly, I think leaving it on the mower is easier. So let me see what I can do with that. If I have any success, I'll get back to y'all. Alrighty, I was successful. Let me tell you what I did. I just had an old screwdriver here. What I originally did is I just took it and wedged it in between the tire and the wheel, because I'm not concerned about the seal on the bead because I'm putting a tube in it. If you're concerned about the seal on the bead, if you're like replacing a tire or something like that, then this probably wouldn't be the best method to use. But I was able to do that and then take my hammer and another important thing I used is I pulled that back with the screwdriver, threw a little WD-40 on it, let it lubricate around the bead, just kind of moved the tire, rotated the tire a couple times, and took the side of my hammer and just hit it a couple swift kicks like that, and they ended up coming loose. So that's all I needed them to do. I'll keep them on the mower. Saves you from having to go through the trouble of these plastic dust caps. I'd love to be able to just keep those on there just to help keep the dust out of the axles and stuff like that. So next, I'm going to take some pliers. I need to get rid of some stuff, but it's the way it is around here sometimes. It all leaves eventually. Take some pliers, and we're going to pull out that the valve stem there. So let me find pliers real quick. Lay y'all down. You should just go for the big boys, why not? So, let me do this. Smart, if you can, to hold the back side. Like I said, we're not going to keep these valve stems, so it's not that big of a deal to rip them apart. That one actually came out like that. sometimes they're old and they'll split off. And so, I mean, I'm not going to say these valve stems are so cheap, but last thing you want to do, because I did it with a Craftsman earlier, in an earlier video, is it got caught up in the tire and it was a pain in the rear end to get out. So I'm going to do that to do this to the other side. There is my phone. And we'll start putting the tube in. And one more thing, y'all probably saw it in my little tutorial of how to broke the bead off. I do have it elevated with a jack stand just off the ground. Again, I wouldn't recommend getting under the mower with that set up, but just for raising the back tires. A couple 100 pounds coming down on a flat tire on your hand is going to do very little damage to your hand, if any. That's the reason behind that. You can get more jack stands, take safety in consideration. You can wear safety glasses, you can wear gloves. So, got the tire tube. I'll at least show y'all how I start them, and then I'll show y'all the finished product. Actually, let me first grab me some vice grips. I'll be glad when I don't have to climb over mowers to get to tools, but vice grips. And open the tire tube. What I first do is I put the stem in first. Right there. So I put the stem in first, and then I vice grip the stem, and then try and work my way around to get the inside of the tube in. So, tire tube, undo your valve stem cap. Valve stem in first. Valve stem's in. Grab your needle noses. You don't have to put a tight grip, just enough of a grip to where the valve stem is not going to come back out. You can put the cap on it as well if you'd like. If you don't, it won't be that big of a deal. Perfect. Okay. So now what I do is I kind of go around the tire. The good thing about having this elevated is you can just rotate it. The WD-40 helps quite a bit as well. And you got, see, I got it all the way around the tire on the inside of the tube there. So that's all the way in. Now what I do is the rear tires are, the bigger the tire, the easier that it is what I have experienced. So you end up just shoving the tube under the tire. And with the bigger tire, it actually works out a lot easier to do. The front tires on that Craftsman were a little bit trickier because you have to get it completely inside. Of the existing tire. And it gets a little bit more difficult the more you go, or the further you go around. You have to be really careful around the stem. You don't want that to bust or break or split or anything like that. But it is reinforced there at the stem. It's just easier to put the stem in first as opposed to trying to search for it later. So just kind of a word of advice, what I've done in the past. Just keep working, and I'm going to do this off camera. Just keep working it in to the tire, and you'll eventually get it all in. You do have to do a little bit of stuffing at the end in order to get it all inside the tire. But once I get to that end aspect there, I'll show y'all. But that's the way generally I do the tire tubes. They're more intimidating than they actually are. Again, the bigger the tire, the easier it is. Alright, so I was able to stuff it in there, and only took me a couple minutes off camera there to finish this. But make sure you don't want to have any like tubes hanging out past the bead or where the tire sits on the bead there. So you just kind of want to like stuff the tire, pull it towards you. You don't want to see any tube. You want to see a nice clean little area for the bead to set, and the tube will set it for you. You might hear it pop, you might not. The WD-40 will help it out some. Again, the front tires, you can get a low pressure tire gauge, which will tell you exactly how much to put in. In my experience, 10 in the back, 14 in the front, usually the standard issue. I know at least for the Craftsman's, I believe I remember seeing that in the manual. You don't want to see, you want to see the tires generally nice and flat. You don't want to see much of a bulge look to them. You want to see them pretty flat. So I usually just kind of go by feeling and by just putting the air in. Although it is important in the aspect of keeping the deck level. So just make sure that you got approximately the same amount of air in each side, front and back, and that'll hopefully get you where you need to go. So let's fill this tire up. And you can keep the vice grips on too, otherwise the valve stem might try to go back into the tire, which will give you a whole nother set of worms to try and fish out the valve stem. It's not very fun. That helps set the bead, put a little bit more air in it. And that's a little more, just a little more. That's about where you want it to be. Not terribly full, but you can see the bead set whenever I did that. And so now I'm going to put the valve cap back on. Just try and make sure that it's not stressed out on one side either, because you don't want the valve stem to be splitting. This one's okay. It's not going to sit in there perfectly. Again, it's a lawnmower, it's not a car. I could probably pump them up a little bit more, but I'm going to put the other side in. I'll do that off camera since it's the exact same as this. And I guess then it'll be waiting for the weather to get better, and waiting for the fuel line to come in. So what I've already done is I've cleaned everything up, and I think we'll check the deck level next, along with the fuel line, and we will, well, we can sharpen the blades on it while we're at it too. So let me put the tube in, and then we'll get to sharpening the blades. And what I'll do is I'll end part 2 here, because part 3 should be pretty quick with the blades, with the fuel line, putting the hood back on, giving it a good wash, and just honestly just testing it out. So thank y'all for watching part 2. Hope y'all learned how to, I guess, maybe not the best way to put tire tubes in, but a good way to put them in. And just in general, learn how to put a deck belt on one of these Murrays too. Really easy stuff. Again, you can do stuff like this in your own home without having to go pay a shop the outrageous shop rate. And again, the tubes, I think the pair was just over 20. The deck belt was 10 online. Ordering online's your friend. Helps keep your costs down. It's always good to support the local dealers and stuff, but just with their logistics cost, it's almost makes it not even worth trying to fix stuff, because you're going to have almost the amount of money in the mower as you are going to be able to sell it for. So anyways, that's all I've got this video, part 3. Hopefully the third and final part will be coming up soon. Thank you all again for watching. If you like videos, riders, mowers, push mowers, customer return stuff, there's a lot of stuff like that on my channel. Subscribe, leave a comment, feedback, whatever you'd like. Thank you all again.